if you would give me a few minutes of your time and join me in this journey. I'm taking you to a place there is no place beyond. It's the furthest you can travel. It's the furthest you can go with God. There is no place beyond this. It's a journey, and I want to start you, continue the journey, and come to our destination, see where you are in this journey. Let me read Hebrews 4, 14, 15, and 16. Seeing then that we have a great high priest that has passed into the heavens. Jesus is identified. Jesus, the Son of God. Seeing we have a high priest, let us hold fast our profession. Let us hold fast to what we professed. And he goes into the negative to explain the positive. For we have not a high priest who cannot be touched with the feelings of our infirmities and weaknesses, but was in all points tempted and tried, like we are, yet without sin. Seeing that, let us therefore come boldly unto the throne of grace. You're coming to the throne. There is no place beyond that. This is the ultimate in the destination of spiritual travel. Come boldly to the throne of grace. Why? That we may obtain mercy and find grace to help in the time of need. You can come to God anytime, but you cannot come anyhow. There's a special dress code that you have to have before you can come to God. Look at this young, beautiful woman. She's going to be a bride. It's a special wedding day. How is she going to dress? Exceptionally well. I understand there's a show called Bridezilla or Godzilla or something like that, where the bride is very particular about the way her dress is done and her arrangement. And so she's very fussy because this is a big day when she's going to stand in front of everybody and make a vow. And so she dresses in white. And somebody said, you know why she dresses in white? Because this is the happiest day of her life. And so we want to know why the men dress in black. That was a freebie. It had nothing to do with where I was going. But she dressed for the occasion. Unlike a soldier in Afghanistan, he has a backpack of 40 to 50 pounds, machine guns, arms, ammunition, everything for warfare. He's dressed to kill. Come into the theater, the operating room, you find a surgeon. He's not in a three-piece suit. There's nothing exciting and happy about what he's doing. He's trying to save a life. He's in a plain outfit with a little cap on and some sharp instruments. He's doing his work. Every profession seems to have a dress code. You've got to be dressed up for what you do. I am saying that you couldn't come to God any old way. God has a particular dress code to approach him. Now, subject is dressed to be blessed. If you want to be blessed, you have to dress up. How many of you know what dress up mean? That's what you did this morning, didn't you? You took a bath, you changed, you put on your best, you perfumed up because you dress up. You want to look nice. You want to look nicer. So you did your best. Why is it when we come to God, We don't dress up for him. When we come to stand before his awesome majesty, why do we come in rags? Dressed to be blessed. I will show you how. And I'll show you the differences. There are 5 positions, 5 states of the journey. My theme is the journey to the throne. I want to ask you, where in this journey are you? There are 5 spots, every one of them great. Every one of them good. But is that where God have invited you? He said, come boldly. This is an invitation to stand before his august majesty. Where are you in your journey from here to the throne? And everywhere I'm going to mention, these are just briefly mentioning till I get to the throne. So watch them and tell me where you are in the journey to the throne. The first one is the Syrophoenician woman. She came to Jesus. She's outside the covenant. She's not even in the family of God. Jesus said, I can't give you what belongs to the children. And she said, Lord, even the dogs eat of the crumbs that fall from the master's table. And her request was granted. Some of us are living here. This is the extent of our prayer lives. We are happy with crumbs. Nothing is wrong with that. But that is not what God have invited you to. He said, come to me in front of my throne. But some of us are very happy to eat of the crumbs that fall from the table of grace. Nothing is wrong with that. Bless you if you have the crumbs, because one crumb from Jesus' table is better than the whole bakery of the devil. But are you going to stay there? Is this how you're going to pray all your life? Give me crumbs. Give me crumbs. I'll take leftovers. God has more for you. God has more than crumbs for you. It's the right of the children to get the whole bread. Why have you been settling for crumbs? Crumbs is good. It's a great starting place. But it's not the glory of the throne. And so after that, we find another level of prayer. It's the servant. The servant. The centurion comes to Jesus and says, Lord, I am not worthy that you should come under my roof. But speak the word, and my servant shall be healed. And Jesus recognized him. Him recognizing authority, said, okay, I see your faith. Go. Your servant is healed. Some of us are at that level of prayer where we feel so unworthy, where we beat ourselves down, thinking we are never going to ever be worthy to stand in the presence of God. So we say, Lord, speak your word, send your word, and do the job. And mind you, God will do it. God will send his word and heal you. But is that what God wants for you? Is that the ultimate? Is that the final place of the destiny of the born-again child? You can stay there all your life. Where are you in the journey to the throne? Then there is the third one, the beggar. Like Bartimaeus, he sits on the highway begging. Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me. You know he had mercy on him. You know he stopped what he was doing and he attended to his cry. But is that what you're going to be all your spiritual life, a beggar? How long will you sit by the gate, beautiful, asking for an alms? Is it wrong to beg God? No, but if that's the level of your prayer life, where all you do is beg, beg, beg like a beggar and don't know the privilege that God have given to you and have never yet heeded the invitation to come boldly before the throne, you will stay there and beg all your life. So you could be a beggar. Always begging, that's fine. God will give to you always. You could be the Syrophoenician outside living on crumbs. That's okay. You will live on crumbs. God will do it. You could be a servant feeling unworthy. You know, you're not worthy to come before his throne and his presence. That's fine. He will send his word and heal you. At every level, God will answer your prayer. Then he said, I will not call you servants anymore. He promotes us to friendship. You are now my friends. And that's the fourth point that we travel in our journey to the throne. And Jesus gives the parable of the friend who came to his friend at midnight and said, friend, lend me 3 loaves. The problem with being a friend of God is that you're still on the outside knocking for him who is in the inside to throw something at you. You're still borrowing from God. You're a friend, but you have not yet come deep inside the heart of God. You're still standing outside knocking. Lend me 3 loaves. You're a friend of God, and that is wonderful, and he will lend you. Is that where you want to be all your life? And so the 5th kind of praying or asking is found in the prodigal son. He's not a beggar. He's not outside the covenant. He's not asking as a servant or a friend. He's a son. He said, Father, give me. The word there is aiteo in Greek, which means to demand your rights as a son. And that's what he did. He demanded his rights. Father, give me the portion that belongs to me. And you have that right too. You can go anytime to your father and ask him for your portion, and he will give it to you. Many of us have gone there before. We have taken the portion of blessing that God has given us. We have gone into a far country and we have squandered what God has given to us. The things God have deposited in our lives over and over. Where is it today? You are still living in a pig pen, yet you are his son. You've never come to the throne. You've never been before this majesty. Yet you have had your prayers answered in those 5 areas. You've been asking for crumbs, you got crumbs. You've been begging, whatever you begged for, you got. You've been a servant, you feel unworthy, you can't come to him. He sends his word and heals you. You've been a friend of God, you've been knocking on his door. He opened up at midnight hour and he was hesitant, but he still gave you as many as you had need of. And you've been a son, taking God's blessing and squandering it all your life. Now you're in a pig pen. Where are you in the journey to the throne? These 5 things are legal. They are methods we can get from God. But is that the ultimate? Is that what God wants for you and for me? I say no. I say there is more. I say there is a higher place. I say there's a more glory-filled opportunity for every child of God. And so let us therefore come boldly to the throne of grace. You are coming to a throne. You're not going to a courthouse to have your rights read. You're not standing before a judge. It's a great white throne. It's a mighty throne of grace. And you've got to recognize that when you come in the Spirit and by the Spirit, you're standing, afforded the privilege to stand before his majesty, clothed in humility, clothed in the beauty of Jesus, to stand before him. Have you ever stood before him? Have you ever come into the throne room and know that you're there? And walked in boldly, gracefully, and humbly before the God of heaven? Have you ever experienced that? It's the privilege of many, but the experience of so few who have learned to live in his presence We misunderstand the term in his presence. We think that's his presence coming down in the church. There is something better than that. Distinguish his presence in you and you in his presence. He wants you to come there. Let's talk about the throne. This is where my message is. I've just weeded out the 5 things that we do. We need to come here and briefly talk to you about your position before the throne. It is a throne, and I want you to recognize that. Who sits on the throne? A king. This is not the son coming to the father. This is not the servant coming to the Lord. This is not a friend coming to a friend. This is the saint coming to the King of glory. You are coming before the throne of grace. It's not a throne of condemnation. It's not a throne of judgment. It's not a throne of sympathy. It's a throne of grace. And he who sits on the throne, his very name is grace. Pentecostals really don't know much about grace. You've never probably heard sermons on grace. You hear it in the Baptist churches and evangelical churches. Because we really don't understand what grace is. We're so into law. We're so into bondage. We're so into don't do this and do that. We don't understand grace. And when you live in the presence of the throne of grace, grace will fill your life. 13 epistles Paul began, and even Peter and James. Grace and peace be multiplied unto you. Paul speaks of God as the God of all grace abounding towards you. Grace, brother, grace. You're not here because of how good you are, how well you studied, or how much you gave. You are here because of the grace of God. It's the grace of God that brought you this far. And he's asking you to stand in front of the throne of grace. It's a throne. It's no ordinary place. And you are invited to come. But you cannot come anyhow you want. There is a dress code to come into his presence. Picture the Persian king. Artaxerxes. Queen Esther, the queen, his wife, wants to come to him. This is a human being, a mortal. He is surrounded by 12 archers, sharpshooters, two behind the throne, on pillars, and all the sides of the king are 12 sharpshooters with poison arrows. Their aim is at the door. If that person comes through that door unannounced and is not recognized by the king, and if the king will not say a word, those arrows fly, hit their target, and they drop dead instantly in the very presence of the king, because they were not invited, because they were not summoned, because they didn't get the grace to come and stand before a human king. Aren't you glad that Jesus has lifted his scepter of righteousness once and for all and says, son, come. That's why you can come boldly. You have no reason to fear. As a matter of fact, the word boldly suggests something. That in the Old Testament, only the high priest was allowed to come into the Holy of Holies once a year and present the blood of the Lamb on the seat of atonement, the mercy seat. But they were very scared. If this priest had any sin unconfessed and unclean in his life, and he went into the presence of God, it was very possible that he could drop down dead, struck by the judgment of God for approaching the holiness of God unqualified. And now if he falls down dead there, nobody else is qualified to go in. So what they would do is tie a rope, literally tie a rope to his ankle, and let him walk in the presence of God with a rope tied to him. There is a reason why on the hem of his garment there were bells. And the bells had to be ringing. So the priest always would be moving like this. He had to continuously make a sound. When they outside heard the sound of the bells, they knew the priest was alive. But if that sound stopped, they knew that something went wrong and that he has fallen down dead and that nobody else could go in there, so they had to drag him out. Do you know how many preachers' bells stopped whistling long time ago and should be dragged out of the pulpit? Do you know how many believers have lost their joy? There is no echo of music coming from their garments. Do you know that nobody wants to touch the hem of our garments anymore because we are not happy? Because there is no testimony of music coming from us. Because we died in the presence of God, because we walked in there not unqualified but disqualified. So Jesus understood that you couldn't, and hear me, of the 5 things I mentioned, the beggar, the servant, the friend, the son, and the outsider of the covenant, not one of them could come in the presence of God. As they were, they got answers. They got miracles. God heard them. But you cannot come in his presence except you come one way. The only way you can enter into this throne room is as a priest. No other way. It's the typology in the Old Testament. Moses alone, by exception, was allowed to come into the tabernacle. But even Moses couldn't go and put the blood on the mercy seat. It's the privilege of the priest. So Jesus said to the Father, I think we have a problem here, Father. Nobody could come to you except they are priests, and these 5 groups are all commoners. What shall we do? Hear what Jesus did in Revelation 5:10. 9, it says, and they sung a new song saying, thou art worthy to take the book and to redeem us to God by thy blood out of every kindred, tongue, and people and nation, and has made us unto our God kings and priests. He made us kings and priests and qualified us for automatic entry into the presence of the Shekinah. Every one of us now belong to not the Aaronic, but the Melchizedek priesthood, a kingdom of priesthood. Oh, you are a royal priesthood, a holy nation, that you might bring the sacrifices of praise unto God. Can you tell me something? If you understand, you are not a commoner. You are a royal, kingly priest unto the Most High God. So you're qualified to enter, and you can come boldly, and you can come anytime. Unfortunately, you cannot come anyhow. You've got to be dressed to be blessed. Let me define that further and finish. Zechariah 3, and I will read it because you're probably unfamiliar with it. Zechariah 3, a revelation of what's happening behind the scenes between God, Satan, and the high priest and angels. I read Zechariah 3:1. And he showed me Joshua, the high priest, standing before the angel of the Lord, and Satan standing at his right hand to resist him. Most of the time where you find men right with God, you'll also find the enemy there to resist. But the Lord said unto Satan, the Lord I, the Lord, rebuke you, Satan. I reject your accusations against the high priest. But there's a problem. Satan was right. Now Joshua was clothed with filthy garments. This is the high priest. And he stood before the angel. As far as he could go, he couldn't go any further. And he answered and spake unto those, this is the head angels speaking to the other angels that were around them. Take away the filthy garments from Joshua the high priest. And the angel spoke to him and said, behold, I have caused thine iniquity to pass from thee. This is the high priest. And I will clothe thee with a change of new clean garments. Not only that, I said, put a clean headband, a headdress. They wore a mitre on their heads with a sparkling gem stone that reflected the glory of the Shekinah. So they put a fair, clean, new mitre upon his head and clothed him with new garments. And the angel stood before the Lord. Once you change your garments, once your garments are clean, who shall ascend unto the hill of the Lord? He who has clean hands and a pure heart. He who has the righteousness of Christ and the garment of righteousness over him. He alone, regardless if you're a priest, if you're going to come before God, you've got to come clean. Can you say, come clean? And the Lord, thus saith the Lord of hosts. Now the Lord of hosts, the word host is, the Lord is Shabbaoth, the Lord of the fighting armies of heaven, the captain of the armies, the angelic fighting forces. This is one of his titles, the Lord of Shabbaoth, the Lord of hosts. Says to the high priest, if you will walk in my ways, and if you will keep the charge I have given to you, you will judge my house, you will keep my courts, and I will cause you to walk in and out of my presence and hang out with the angels. What a privilege. What a privilege it is to be a priest. What a disaster it is to be a priest with filthy garments. No wonder why our prayers are not answered, because there's this big X. Piers. What was his name? Piers what? Piers Morgan is ready to hit the X button and disqualify you from entering. Because you're a priest, but you're not clean. He made you a priest. But we have a problem with the garments. So you got to get dressed. You got to take off the filthy garments of the flesh. You cannot come in the presence of grace garbed in the robe of flesh. Can't. You got to change. Put off and put on. Get dressed. The high priest had special clothes of special colors, and they all had significance, and I'm not going into them, but just the fact is, you could come to God anytime, but you can't come anyhow. If you're going to come, you have to come as a priest, belonging to the royal priesthood. What a glorious opportunity. I am glad they don't have to tie us down with rope or chain. If the devil tries to chain me, that chain cannot stop me from coming before his magnificent majesty. I have been invited to come before his throne, and I come with exceeding joy, because I'm coming to a king, the King of grace. Thou art coming to a king. With thee large petitions bring. For his grace and power is such that none can ask too much. Come. Come before his throne. Learn to stay there. Learn to live there. Learn to dwell in his presence and linger in there. That's where he infuses you with grace. That's where you are clothed with the glory of God. That's where you change from glory to glory as you stay in front of the throne. He who sits on the throne. Revelation 4 and 12 verse. In 12 verses, the word throne is mentioned 13 times. It's all about the throne. In Revelation 5, the word throne again is mentioned 7 times. Once you cross the last verse of chapter 3, where Jesus rewards the Laodicean church and says to the overcomer, he who overcomes will I grant to sit with me on my throne, as my Father has allowed me to sit on his throne. Oh, the beauty from standing in front of his throne to overcoming, that you might sit with him in the throne of his glory. You don't know your privileges. You have contented to eat the crumbs. God bless you if all you want for the rest of your life is to eat the crumbs of grace. God bless you if you want to stay by the spiritual highway begging. God bless you if all you want to remain is a servant who feels unworthy to come before him. He sent his word. He'll answer you somehow. Oh, your friend knocking on the door, lend me 3 loaves. Yes, he will give you as much as you need, but you're still outside. Or a son ungrateful took all his blessing and wasted them. Now in the pig pen, miserable and frustrated. The first thing the father said to his servants, put on a new robe on him. Dress up my son. Give him new shoes. Of course, he had to give him a soaking bath for 3 days. Do you know that Esther had to stay 6 months in preparation, soaking her body in perfume and in oils, just to stand before the king? You are coming to the majesty on high. Do you come just rushing? Only fools rush in where angels dare not tread. But don't be scared, because you have been invited by his majesty to come before the throne of grace. Why? That you might find 2 things. That you might obtain mercy. The word mercy translates better in the word benevolence. You are coming to a benevolent God whose benevolence, whose goodness flows over to you. The very word throne of grace means, grace in the Greek, charis, means, the best translation is unmerited favor. You are getting high favor, something you don't deserve. Think of it this way: when you come before the throne of grace, you're coming before the throne of favor. All God could do is favor you. When the Spirit of God, some interpreters said, overshadowed Mary, and the Holy Ghost overshadowed her, they said it was the very throne of grace came over her and pronounced, thou art highly favored. The highest favor. The very throne of grace hovered over her, producing from her body the Son of Grace. You want Jesus to be born into you? and you want the grace of God to manifest through you, the throne of grace must hover over you. You must live in the presence of grace. It's the privilege of many, but the experience of just a few. Because you have been contented to stay in one of those methods of praying. Begging, taking leftovers and crumbs, sending his word, or knocking on his door, or spending out his grace. All he will bless you with. But you have a higher privilege. Will you take it? Will you change your garments, change yourself, change your attitude when you stand before his glorious presence? You'll never be sad. There's so much stuff. Just allow me to just break this in. Breaking news. I'll stop regular programming for this news flash. Nehemiah, the king's cupbearer, standing before the king of Babylon. And the king looked at him. He said, Nehemiah, why is your face sad? This is not sickness, but sorrow of heart. The law says that he could have died. The king was very fussy, picky, and moody. And if he was sad and wasn't pleasing a performance at that moment, could have ordered the execution. As a matter of fact, here is the brilliant truth. He was the king's cupbearer. That meant that people always tried to poison the king. That was one of their favorite methods. And they would put it in the wine. The king's cupbearer had to first taste the wine, not just sip it. He had to take a big gulp down and wait for 5 minutes. And if he was still standing, then the king would drink from that cup. Jesus said, can you drink from the cup that I have drunk from? The cup of the king's cupbearer is tasting death. You cannot stand in the presence of the king unless first you have drunk from the cup of death. Because only that which have died and is now alive by the Spirit can stand in his presence. You come for communion. Didn't you know that you're the king's cupbearer? Do you know the meaning of it? I still have to preach on the 5 cups. That's one of them. Sorry. I'm not crying. Yeah, I need to see what I'm saying here. Hallelujah. Oh, Lord, I thank you. I thank you for the privilege. Dressed to be blessed. As you put on your high royal priestly garments, clean and sanctified, and you come into his presence with boldness, you will find mercy. El ilos is the Greek word, which means benevolence, kindness, sympathy, goodness, and you will obtain grace or favor. Favor. Something you never deserved, that you might find it in a time of need. Do you have any needs in your life? Then would you come to the throne? But you could only come as a priest. And if you come as a priest, you've got to come clean. Come, bringing the blood of the lamb in your hand. When he sees the blood, everything automatically opens up for you. Because it's the blood of Jesus on his cross that qualifies you to become his priest. So, dress up. Dress to be blessed as you journey to the throne I would like to know, where are you in your prayer walk? You're the Syrophoenician? Happy with crumbs when you have a king to feast at his presence? Are you a beggar? Just begging God, begging God, begging God, begging. Go ahead and beg. You'll beg all your life. There's more for you, sir. Are you a servant feeling unworthy? Don't come to my house, Lord. No. I don't want you home. I have bad TV shows. Don't come to my house. Just send the word. Send a tape, Pastor. Don't come visit. Or a friend. Lord, you're my friend. What a friend we have in Jesus. All our needs to bear. And you go knock on his door. And he delays a little bit, and then after he tosses out as much as you need. Or the son. Which one are you? I know where I am. I was all of those 5. That's why I could talk about them. I prayed all those prayers. I've been there every time I was a beggar. I loved the crumbs. I was the son squandering grace. I was a friend knocking on his door. Knock. And then he said, son, what's up? Why don't you come before me? And when I started to come before you, you're not dressed right, boy. And when you even dress up right, you're unclean. Change those garments. Put on the royal priestly robe. Then stand before me boldly and go ahead and ask. I'll give you grace. I'll give you favor. I'll cause men to favor you. I'll cause kings and governors to favor you. You want a prophecy? You want a prophetic word? Here's one. Dress up and come before God, clean and holy, and he will highly favor you in everything you do. You can't beat that. That's his promise.